Hey, this is me. I'm Kim, and we're at My Other's Keeper. I want to be able to welcome everybody. I want to tell you um, that if you're watching from the replay, thank you very much for taking the time. And make sure that you like, subscribe, and comment. It really helps me understand who's watching, what you want to see, what you want to hear, and basically we can become a community together, and that's my aim, is to be each other's keepers. I am going to start by introducing myself with something that um, says partnership presentation. I work with the Schizophrenia Society of Saskatchewan to do presentations about mental health from my perspective as a person who has bipolar type 2, as well as some other alphabets behind my name. And I'm going to read that presentation, but I'm also going to expand a little bit so you can understand a little bit more about me. If you want, you can ask questions and I will answer them either as they come in or at the end. I will make sure that you eventually will get answered. I'm going to read it because otherwise I get very distracted, which you will find out about soon. Hi there, I'm Kim, and I'm going to start this presentation about mental health by telling you about a physical injury I suffered in 2015. It's affected my body's general pain level, the way my back feels, tension in my neck, recurrent headaches, mental clarity, and cognition. Actually, I slept almost 18 to 20 hours a day for almost a full year. It can still be very debilitating at times. Just to look at me, you would never think anything was wrong. Only people who are close to me and those I open up to really know the depth and the pain of my disability. So, what happened? Well, I had a complete nervous breakdown in 2015 because of a bullying situation that happened at work. I was being bullied, being told that I couldn't do my job, that I was an ineffective teacher, that I was not able to engage students, and I was basically doing everything wrong. My boss was gaslighting me into thinking that I was couldn't do anything right. And unfortunately, he did it for so long that I ended up having a nervous breakdown with the threat of firing me every day that I was there. So that was a lot of stress. So that that bullying added to PTSD, which is actually a physical ailment that changes the chemistry of your brain. And it exacerbated several chronic illnesses that I have, which are bipolar type 2, undifferentiated anxiety disorder, ADHD, as well as an earlier PTSD that I had from when I was a child. None of these will ever really fully go away, but there are treatments for the symptoms. The wonderful thing is that none of this even scratches the surface of how interesting, complex, or funny I am. I don't let any of these injuries define me, control me, or limit me as far as I'm able. I do have limitations, but they don't limit me, the real me, the whole me. My family history consists of many people with diabetes, alcoholism, and disorders including depression, ADHD, eating disorders, and bipolar disorder. One of my first memories as a little girl is kneeling beside the bed and praying with my mom. I believe that this God based foundation gave me great peace and strength as I grew, and numerous traumatic events happened in my life, including the first one, which was a sexual assault by a family member, a child family member, when I was only 4 years old. Child on child abuse is just as horrific as adult to child, but unfortunately, child to child means that the offending child is just as much a victim. They have been taught somehow that it's okay to do these things. So you just don't know where they got that information. I didn't remember that situation until I was about 16 years old. And I know that it was a real event and not a false or implanted memory because I checked the situation with my sister when I remembered, and she remembered the event that happened. She didn't know about the abuse, but she remembered the event. I asked her again recently, and she completely has forgotten all about it. So I'm really grateful that I verified it so many years ago. As a child, we lived in a dysfunctional home. And I had to learn to stuff all of my negative emotions so that the world wasn't allowed to see them. They were only allowed to see our perfect family. I can trace the symptoms of bipolar back to when I was about grade 7 or 8. I was running home from school and I tripped on the sidewalk and I really hit the front of my head hard. I was completely dazed, just totally dazed. And I didn't know anything about the possibility of concussions or concussion disorders at the time, so I thought nothing of it afterward. But after this time, I can clearly recall deep depressions and panic attacks setting in. One particular fight with my dad across the table at supper time, um, we were yelling at each other and he was berating me as usual. And I said, "So what do you really think of me?" He says, "I wish you were never born." Well, that's just what every 13 or 14-year-old girl wants to hear, right? So I went to his office. I took a little razor blade with me and I started to cut my wrist with the intention of killing myself. At that time, God brought a song to my head called "I'm Giving Up" by Brian Duncan. It saved my life. I'm giving up, giving up. I'm never going to give up again. I'm giving up, giving up. I'm hanging on till the end, is the way the chorus goes. And it reminded me that I had a bigger purpose to my life than what had already happened. And I couldn't give my dad what he wanted because that would make him win. And that was not acceptable. As I grew older, there were also periods of happiness and sleeplessness that would last for periods of many days or weeks. I would be very creative for a while, and then I would have no inspiration for a long time. This got worse when I was 16 and my dad got arrested for his abuse, and my parents got divorced. Um, my dad had been abusing my sister for many years by that point, and it got to the point where she had left home, come back for a short period of time, and he did it again. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and he got arrested. My mom and I were absolutely floored at the time. We had no idea what was going on, but um, looking back, we can definitely see where signs were that were knowing what we do now that were unmistakable. As a late teen, I became terribly reckless for my personality. In grade 12, I started to neglect my friends and schoolwork, which really was very unusual for me. I got to engaged to a man who was 5.5 years older than me. He was 23, I was 18. He isolated me from all of my own friends, but treated me like an afterthought to his friends and activities. I had such poor self-worth that I figured that's all I deserved. After all, he didn't hit me or anything, so is that really abuse? Well, yes, it is. That type of emotional abuse frequently becomes physical abuse later on. At the end of the first semester of grade 12, I had yet another major panic. Oh, sorry, in grade 7 is when I wanted to hurt myself. And again, in grade 12, I had another major panic when I was studying for my English final exam. Though I was actually really smart, I remembered nothing that I had done that semester. I looked at my notes and I didn't even recognize my own handwriting. I became instantly hopeless, and I decided that I was such a waste as a person that the world really would be better off without me. I logicked away all of my friends, all of my family. I had only lived in that town for less than a year or just over a year, I guess, and I figured nobody knew me very well. My mom knew what our family had been through, so she would understand. Um, my sister had been through the ringer, and she would be better off without me holding her back. All of these things came to my mind, and those are absolute lies. The one I couldn't make sense was my dog. She laid her head in my lap, looked at me with those great big puppy dog eyes, and licked my wound until I was able to break through that panic. So I called my fiance. I could actually get myself to do that. So I called my fiance, and he's like, "No, I don't want anything to do with your little high school drama. I'm playing video games with the guys." And of course, that's what's important. It's nothing to do with me. So I called a different friend, an ex boyfriend, who came from two towns over. He made land speed records, and he came and he sat with me quietly until my mom got home from work. It took almost a year and several tries on different medications. Oops, I skipped a couple pages. There we go. Sorry. Neither of my suicide attempts were after a period of deep depression, which included planning. They were knee jerk reactions to a panic situation and the true, deep, full belief that nothing I could do would ever make anybody else happy. I would not be able to fulfill anything. I was a waste as a human being, and the world would really be better off with me holding them back. Almost a year after my final suicide attempt, I broke up with my fiance and became best friends with a young man who treated me the way a real person should be treated, with respect. Like I was smart, valuable, and worthy of real affection and not just what he could get from me. This was absolutely amazing since all of my boyfriends before him just wanted one thing, and he wasn't after that. He wanted to treat me like a princess, and I was floored. I really was floored. So we began dating, and my very outrageous, outgoing personality came back with a vengeance. In fact, for almost 3 years, from about 1990 to about 1993 or so, I barely slept 3 or 4 hours a night. I was partying and I didn't need alcohol or drugs to keep me buzzed. I was high on life. I was very slim since I would dance for hours and hours on end. I would go out to the club at, I don't know, 9 p.m. or something like that, not get home after closing, and I wouldn't have had an alcoholic beverage all night. I would just be drinking water, and I had been dancing all night. So, man, was I fit. Um, I was high on life. I was very slim since I would dance for hours on end, but had little appetite for food. Unfortunately, I also put myself in several very dangerous situations, which ended up in me becoming assaulted in a number of ways. And generally, they were sexual assaults. After 5 years, I got married to the man I started dating after my disastrous engagement. As an engineer, his steady personality helps to ground my flightiness and exhaustion, but it hasn't stopped it altogether. He's been my rock the entire time we've been together. And flighty is kind of part of my personality that he loves. I'm a redhead, and he loves that about me. Redhead is more of a personality than a hair color, and anybody with redhead hair or who loves somebody with red hair can tell you that from firsthand experience. My daughters were born just over a year apart, and when my younger daughter was about 11 months old, which was longer than postpartum depression normally sets in, I fell into another crushing depression. I knew where that type of depression had taken me in the past, and I knew I couldn't go there again. My girls needed to have a functional mom, and my husband needed to have a functional wife. My husband was initially resistant to me seeking professional help. He figured that our love could overcome anything. After all, if we trusted each other, we could talk and we could make it through it, and he could support me and he could make sure that I was okay. I knew that that wasn't going to be enough, so I went to see a counselor. My therapist gave us each a 300 question form for us all to figure out, and he diagnosed my disorder as bipolar type 2. I finally went to my first psychiatrist. Once my husband saw the fantastic change that medication and therapy made, he became my number one advocate for medical psychiatric help. I was so relieved that I had a diagnosis with a name that was treatable and that I didn't have to try to control an out of control brain or behavior. It took almost a year and several tries on different medications for me to find a cocktail that gave me relief but didn't leave me with awful side effects. I simply had to be okay with gaining weight to gain stability. I figured that was a fair trade. I'm now twice the woman I used to be. When my girls were 2 and 3 years old, we moved out of the city we were in and we moved to a teeny weeny little town of, at the time, about 500 people. Now it's blown up to almost 700 people. A few months after we moved here, I began a 4-year double degree in biblical and intercultural studies with a teaching certificate for English as a subsequent language. Unfortunately, though, one of the medications which kept me very stable had the unfortunate side effect of taking away my short-term memory. Bad timing. I didn't realize that that was a side effect. I thought it was just my brain. So when I told my psychiatrist about what was going on, she said, "Why didn't you tell me about this before?" And I explained to her that, I've always been like this. And so she took me off of that medication. We had to work to find another couple that would work, to keep me just as stable, but not have the awful side effect. And, my short-term memory started returning, but, I still do tend to forget stuff, like, don't we all? What did I have for breakfast this morning? I don't remember. So, I've never gone off my medications on purpose. A lot of people do, especially with bipolar disorder or other major, psychiatric disorders. There have been times when I have forgotten a dose, but then I hop right back on. In fact, once you feel better on your medication, please don't quit taking it without a doctor's consent. Um, Make sure that you are able to either have the doctor's consent or make sure that they're able to replace what you're taking with something that will work equally, for you, but at the same time, um, be able to, um, have side effects that you can live with. There are tons and tons of medications out there, and there's no reason that you should be able to go without help, without medication. Medication won't change your personality, it won't change your outlook. What it will do is it'll give you the skills to be able to cope with what you are dealing with, and it'll give you the time and the luxury of being able to deal with what's going on. Hi, Mrs. Lady Hummingbird. Thank you for joining me. So, I remember how awful the lack of control over my emotions and at times over my behavior was. I don't miss the uncontrollable crying fits that would last hours and hours and hours, and sometimes even days at a time. I'd go without sleep for long periods of time, and sometimes I was walking through life as an absolute zombie. I would have a full body blink as the electrical system in my body would react to a panic or an anxiety that in my brain I didn't know was there, but my body would deal with it. And the strange thing is, for so many years in my early life, the first 18 years of life, I had to stuff all my emotions and it became part of who I was. So even now, there are times when I will have a panic or an anxiety or something, and I don't know that I'm stressed until my body reacts either with a tickle in my throat, and I cough and cough and cough, or sometimes my entire back absolutely seizes up. It's incredibly painful. But then I have to look back and say, okay, what am I stressed about? I don't know, but I know I'm stressed about something. I also never want to go back to the fun hypomania. Things like singing at the top of my lungs outside in the middle of the night, dancing down the street, skipping through the office I worked at, acting like the coffee fairy, or having very loud, very raunchy, really hilarious conversations with clients as I was doing their hair. Um, it was totally inappropriate, but again, it's who I was, and people learned to expect that from me. It seemed like I was at the top of the world or I was the life of the party. But in reality, those times were just as damaging to my brain and debilitating as the depressions were. It was just as medically, chemically unbalanced. While in treatment, I've been generally stable. When I say that, I mean very rarely do I have panic attacks. My hypomanic days of uncontrollable spending or risky behavior are really rare now. And my depressions will only last a day or two. I still do avoid places and situations which trigger my PTSD, but even then, I don't have to be quite as conscious of it as I had been at one time. I wanted to make another comment about um, my depressions being a day or too long. So, the difference between a depression and being sad has a reason. My depressions don't have a reason. They show up when everything's going great. They are times when the sun is shining, the birds are singing, my kids are happy, my husband is doing well at work, everything's great. I just can't. I can't get out of bed. I can't shower. I can't brush my teeth at times. I can't do anything that regularly is used for survival. And that's what depression looks like for me. And when it gets really bad, I can't get out of bed for days and days and weeks and weeks. But um, now that I'm well, if I have a depression, it will last a day or two, and that's usually okay. I have had some strange hallucinations in the past. Initially, when I was alone and there was no possibility of anyone around, I would hear someone call my name from some distance behind me. That really scared me. I thought I was psychotic. Well, I was, but I didn't know that it was treatable and that it was okay. It really scared me. I felt bugs on my skin only to look at the spot, see no bugs, and have the sensation disappear. Usually it's on my arms, and I don't know why. I've smelled things that weren't there, like toast or oatmeal. For some reason, I hallucinate breakfast. But my favorite hallucination was that one night my husband and I were out on a date, and we went to a Chinese food restaurant. And as you do, we ordered a lot of different dishes, and one of them happened to be lemon chicken. So we tasted the lemon chicken, and I looked at him. I'm like, honey, what do you taste? And he says, well, this is excellent lemon chicken. I was having the sweetest, richest, most silky milk chocolate you've ever had in your entire life. He got no more chicken that night. So I've now been with the same man for 33 years. We have two amazingly smart daughters, each of whom does have their own mental illness, but they're aware of it so much earlier than I was. They're able to treat it, and they don't have to have many of the same problems that I had at their ages. I'm an artist. I'm a retired ESL teacher, and I have a steady, joy filled life because of my family, community of friends, and medical professionals, including doctors, psychiatrists, therapists, and pharmacists. These days, I rest when I need to, I paint, and I sing when I want to. I remain fulfilled by helping people with their own personal and spiritual growth. And because of this, I've been with the partnership program, like I said at the beginning, for about 12 years or so, to give people hope, to demystify mental illness, to tell people that it's okay to talk about it. And when you bring it out in the light, it's not nearly so scary. And just to wrap this portion up, I don't suffer from mental illness. I live with it. I love through it, and I view life through its lens. And I'm not crazy. My psychiatrist said so. Actually, I even asked her one day. I said, because I finished up my presentation with that. And she says, um, you have an illness. You're not crazy. She has patients who are crazy. I just don't happen to be one of them. So there you go. So Sandra from Southeastern Coastal North Carolina, how are you doing? Do you have any questions? I would absolutely love to chat with you. Um, I'm proud of you for showing up um, to this live presentation. I don't know exactly how long it's going to be, but I do know that some things are important for you to know. Number one, I have a mental illness. It's the way it is. I have several actually mental illnesses. I have a lovely alphabet after my name, which has nothing to do with PhD. Oh well. I am married to an amazing man. He, like I said in the presentation, he is my rock. He is steady. He is not perfect by any stretch, but he's the perfect husband for me. And there's nothing else I could add. We have two amazing daughters, one of whom lives 2 provinces away from us, and one of them lives right here with us. And they are each following their own path. They're each happy in what they're doing. And that, honestly, as a parent, is more successful than I could ever add. And last, certainly not least, in fact, this is probably most important, is my relationship with God. I don't frequently make it to church on Sundays because one of the things I have that I didn't list in there is chronic fatigue syndrome. I hate falling asleep in church. I think it's rude. Um, I can close my eyes and listen, but then I can also just as easily drop off, and that's not okay. So I will stay at home and I'll watch the church service on the YouTube channel, which came about because of COVID. And that virus gave us a whole lot of negative things, but it also gave us some positive, including the ability and the normalization of doing things remotely. and being able to see that people are seeing that people are there for you and with you, even though you just don't happen to be physically there. It's really a wonderful point of connection. I really enjoy it. Um, as a child, like I said, growing up, I was a very happy Christian. I accepted Christ into my life because at 4 years old, um, actually at about 3 years old, my parents would have to be at work at the same time for about 30 minutes or so. There was a very short window of time during the day that I would have to be alone. My mom would put some makeup on me and she'd say, "Okay, Kimmy, you're going to be grown up now and you're going to just sit and wait for the babysitter to come." Well, when you're 3, 30 minutes feels like a whole day. And she did the best that she possibly could in her situation. I am not knocking my mom nothing for this, but unfortunately, it created a void in my life, feeling of neglect and abandonment that made things very difficult for me for many, many years. When I was 4, our family was watching a Billy Graham crusade, and Billy was talking about a God who would be there even in your good times and your bad, when you're scared and when you're happy, even when you're doing things that you shouldn't. And I'm sure he was probably talking to the people who, needed to know that, you have to know that God is there even when you're doing things you shouldn't. But what I heard, my need was for a God that was there who would protect me. And so at that point, I've been told this story many times and I can picture it in my mind, but I know that it's only because I've been told that I stood in front of the TV and I said, "Dear God, I know that you're big and I'm only little, but can you come into my heart?" That happened when I was 4. That same year, I was assaulted by one of my relatives. Um, and from that point on, though, God protected my brain from a lot of the traumas that happened in our lives. I won't talk about all of them now because it would be overwhelming. Uh, Suffice it to say, things that a lot of people would describe as trauma in their lives were usually just drama in our family. So it was a matter of being able to have strength to pull through it. Now, God doesn't take away mental illness. He doesn't take away abuse. He doesn't take away our abusers necessarily, but He can protect us from the worst consequences of some of the choices that we've made. Um, I'll talk a little bit about this another day, but there have been times when, before I was with my husband, I was in a really bad mental state and I had some significant abuse issues to deal with. I had no self esteem whatsoever. But every now and then, God would bring a verse to my mind that would just click and make sense. And now, whenever I need it, because as a little girl, we went to church, we memorized a lot of the Bible. I went to Bible camp and again memorized a lot of the Bible. Songs and music speak to me like nothing else. And it is absolutely wonderful to be able um, to just reach back in my brain and have something like the song, um, "Let the flag flow high at the castle of my heart, at the castle of my heart, at the castle of my heart." Anyway, that's one of those things because the king is in residence here. So it's something that means a lot to me. And it means that not only is there a connection with my family, my caretakers, my friends, there's a connection with the one I believe created me, the one I believe is in control, the one that I believe has authority over everything on earth, even the scary things. Again, another day, I will read a poem talking about I would have pulled Joseph out of the pit. And what I see as a scary, evil, awful thing, sometimes in the long run is meant for something good to happen. Is it okay that I was assaulted? No. Is it okay that I was abused? No. But without those, I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't be able to talk to you with intelligence and empathy. I wouldn't be able to have this channel, which is open to people who do not have the same experience as me and some who do. I want to be able to have people join me on this channel. We will do some interviews with people who've had a wide variety of experiences. I am so fortunate to have had an amazing life where I have met people from all over the world, people who were refugees, people who were economic immigrants. We'll learn about the differences between them. I have some very good friends who've had to have amputations because of diabetes, and the other one because of a muscular disorder in her leg that the muscle in her leg started to die. So I would like to have them on as um, people to learn from. I have some very good friends who are in polyamorous relationships. That's not my life, but I want to learn from them. Part of being a keeper, part of being my other's keeper, I'm not responsible for the other. I'm not responsible for the choices that they make. I'm not responsible for the problems that they have. I'm also not responsible for the good things that happen, even if I do give them advice. They're the ones that are responsible. It is my responsibility to keep respecting them, to keep loving them. And while I may not know the person necessarily, I have love in my heart for humans as a vast as a vast group. I can see beauty in people who are homeless because sometimes they're the most wonderful people. They have fallen through the cracks. They have fallen into addictions at young ages, maybe didn't finish school, maybe have never had a job because they never finished school. These people are brilliant. There's this one person I'm thinking of who is absolutely wonderful, brilliant, but he was also hurt very badly by Christians. And he knows what I believe. He knows why I believe. He just disagrees. And I still love him. He's one of my boys. And if possible, I would love to have him on this channel as well. Um, so if there's anyone else who has any questions or comments, I would be more than happy to talk to you. If you want to talk to me at any point, you can email me here at myotherskeeperis@gmail.com. And again, don't forget to hit like, comment, subscribe, all of that. And I would absolutely love to be able to talk to you again. Have an awesome day.